Hey, welcome back. I'm Stephanie Sexton, and this is the Manifest Magic Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going into something I think is going to feel both really validating and really useful at the same time. We're talking about why blogging often feels so much heavier than it should, and what actually changes when you stop treating every post like it has to do everything on its own. If you've ever published something really thoughtful and felt that little exhale of relief, and then found yourself right back at the blank page a few days later, wondering what to write next and whether any of it is actually adding up, this episode is going to name what's happening and giving you a clear way through that. So here's what I want to start with, because I think it's something a lot of people don't really identify directly. When you publish a blog post that isn't connected to anything else, that post is carrying too much weight. It has to attract attention, build trust, explain your work, and ideally move someone toward your offer, all in one piece of content, all on its own. So that's a lot of pressure on one piece of content. It's a lot of pressure to put on any single thing you create, really. And here's what the pressure does over time. It makes the whole process feel inconsistent. Even when you show up and you're genuinely trying, you write when you can, you publish when you have the energy, and then you watch it sit there without doing much. So you write something else, and the cycle continues. I've talked to so many women in this space who assume they need to write more, post more, push more. They just haven't been consistent enough. But when I look at their content, the issue isn't volume or effort. It's that nothing is connected. Every post is starting over fresh. Every post is doing its best alone. There's also a hidden cost to this that I don't think gets talked about enough. Disconnected content increases your decision load every single time you sit down to write. What will you write about? So you're not just creating a post, you're figuring out how to frame your topic, why this topic matters right now, and how it fits into your larger message. That decision-making process repeats from scratch every time. And over weeks and months, that's exhausting. It's not a motivation problem, it's a design problem. So here's the reframe I want to offer before we get into the practical steps. Your blog doesn't need more posts. It needs a structure where the posts it already has and the ones you write next are actually working together. When your content is connected, something shifts. Every post has a role, and each post points somewhere. Your reader can move from one idea to the next without having to search and without losing the thread. So you're not starting from scratch each time they find you and your posts. And here's the piece that matters most for your business. A structured blog becomes part of your sales process, not in a pushy way, in a quiet, steady way where someone can find your work, understand what you do, and naturally move toward your offer because the content guides them there. That's what I call a steady visibility system. And today I want to walk you through what it actually looks like to build one. The framework I use for this is something my friend Diane Houghton at WordPress Basics calls a cache cluster. And Diane explains it as a way of organizing your blog content around one central idea. That way, everything you write connects to something else. It compounds over time, and it lowers the number of decisions you have to make every time you sit down to write. So there are 3 parts. The first part is your cache cluster topic. This is one central idea that connects directly to your offer and to the problem your audience is already trying to solve. Not a broad category, one specific, ownable topic that you can build some depth around. The way you find it is to look at what your clients are coming to you for repeatedly, the questions that show up in your DMs, in your calls, and on your posts. What are people commenting? And these things will also show up in conversations with friends who know what you do. The thing people always seem to be confused or stuck about before they find you, that's your cash cluster topic. So choosing this one topic does something really important beyond just giving you a writing direction. It reduces decision fatigue. Once you know your central topic, every future content decision becomes simpler because you're building depth within a defined direction rather than choosing from an endless pool of ideas. The second part is your cornerstone post. This is one central piece of content that lives at the heart of your cache cluster. It explains your central topic clearly, answers the most important questions your audience has about it, and gives your reader a full picture of what you do and why it matters. Think of it as the post you'd want every new person who finds you to read first. It doesn't need to be long or complicated. It just needs to be clear, connected directly to your offer, and written in a way that feels like a conversation instead of a lecture. Your cornerstone post is also your most important piece for search. When it's written with care around your central topic, it builds authority for that topic over time. Other posts, you will choose to link back to it. Search engines start to understand what you're known for through your internal linking of your posts. And your reader always has somewhere clear to go because there's another linked, related idea inside this central post. So the third part, which we've already mentioned, is your supporting posts. These are posts that expand on your central topic by answering specific questions that your audience already has. So each supporting post zooms in on one piece of the bigger picture, and they all link back to your cornerstone and to each other. There's the important part, linking those supporting posts to each other and back to your central post on that main cache cluster topic. This is where the compounding happens, because instead of each post standing alone, they've created a network that supports your work, that supports your reader, that supports your reader coming into contact with your offer. Because your reader can then move from one to the next naturally, and their trust builds with each step. Your content starts to feel like a guided experience rather than a scattered collection of things you wrote when you had the time. You don't need a lot of these to start. 5 to 10 well-connected posts create more momentum than dozens of disconnected ones. The goal is structure and connection, not volume. I want to take a moment to say why blogging does this in a way that social content just can't. Social content moves fast. You post it, it's seen for a short window, and then it disappears. Your visibility depends then on constant output in social media, which means any week you can't keep up, your presence fades. And that cycle is also exhausting in a really specific way. A blog works differently. Your posts stay accessible. They keep working after you publish them. Each one adds to your overall presence instead of replacing what you posted yesterday. And when they're connected through a structure, they compound. A post you wrote 6 months ago can still be bringing someone new into your world today, especially when your SEO, search engine optimization, is in place. That shift from content that fades daily to content that stays for months and even years is what changes how visibility feels. You're building something instead of maintaining something. And for a lot of the women I work with, that distinction by itself is what makes blogging finally feel worth it. I want to share something I think will make this more concrete. I was working with a woman who'd been blogging for a couple of years. She had a real mix of posts, some personal, some strategic, and some in between. She was showing up, doing the work, but when she looked at her blog, she couldn't see a clear line from any of it to her offer, so neither could her readers. When we mapped her content, we found she actually had everything she needed. The ideas were good, the writing was thoughtful, but what was missing was the structure. There was no central anchor and no post that brought everything together. And that led to a lack of a path that brings her readers toward working with her. So we chose her cash cluster topic together. We identified which existing post could become her cornerstone with a few adjustments. And then we mapped out the rest of her existing posts that could be connected to it and which gaps were worth filling. She didn't write anything new that day. She restructured what she already had so that with internal links, one post pointed to another related post. And so excuse me. So with that restructuring, within a few weeks, she started seeing some movement, some activity. And it wasn't because the internet suddenly discovered her, but because her content finally made sense as a whole, because all of the different scattered pieces of content were now coming into that network I mentioned earlier, where each points to the other and they all point back to your cache cluster topic, that central topic. So people who find one post can then actually follow the thread somewhere. And that's what this structure does. It makes your existing effort count for more. So here's what I want you to take from today. Your blog doesn't need more, it needs a center, one cache cluster topic that connects you to your offer, that connects your reader rather to your offer, and the one cornerstone post that anchors everything, with the supporting posts coming out as parts of the network, parts of the web that guide your reader from one idea to the next. That's the shift from random posts to a steady visibility system. And it's a design change, not a discipline change. The one thing I'd invite you to do this week is simply identify your cache cluster topic. You don't need to write it, don't need to build the whole system this week. Just ask yourself, what is the one recurring problem my audience comes to me to solve? What is the one question you get most often? And what do people always ask you about before they're ready to work with you? Write that down. That's your starting point. If you want support actually building this, the blogging cache cluster workshop is a no-cost session where you'll define your cache cluster topic, start your cornerstone content, and map out your supporting posts so they all connect back to your main idea. A workbook is included so you can turn those ideas into a clear plan during the session itself, rather than leaving with a ton of notes and homework you might revisit later. You can find the link in the show notes or at manifestmagicstudio.com. And if you want ongoing support, once your structure is in place, the Intuitive Business Collective is a no-cost community on School where we work on calm, simple systems for staying consistent without increasing your burnout, without causing you to overwork. And that link is also in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. I really do love that you're spending this time thinking about how your business gets to feel and how it gets to support you rather than you supporting it. So if this episode felt useful, I would love it if you shared it with one other intuitive entrepreneur who's been sitting on a pile of posts that aren't quite adding up yet. That's exactly who this was written for. I'll see you next week. Take care.